Welcome to Real Estate in the Digital Age, or the REDA Podcast. Real estate entrepreneurs Ryan Poole and Ryan Beckett bring you new content every week, reporting on market trends, industry innovations, cutting-edge real estate technology, and perspectives from the field. The future of real estate is here. Are you ready?
Hello, welcome everyone to Real Estate in the Digital Age, the REDA Podcast. As always, I'm here with my good friend Ryan Poole and Frank Giacomelli. I totally messed it up on that one. I had it right on the first time. Audience at home, I messed up the recording in the beginning, so we're just doing the beginning real quick. Giacomelli. I had it right the first time. So I became friends with Frank a while back ago, and he's in business brokerage. And in some states, you need your real estate license. Some states you do not. Florida, where we're recording this podcast, happens to be one of the states that you do need your real estate license. So without further ado, why don't you give us a little intro about how you started and your background and what you do now in terms of business brokering?
So I started in real estate 30-some years ago as a solution to a problem. I was a builder and building spec houses, and the realtor that I hired, we'll just leave it there.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people get into real estate that way.
And so I said I can do this better because he's not doing it.
Yeah.
And so I got my real estate license and started selling, and then I spent 5-6 years building in West Jupiter, and then I built a bunch of houses in the Aero Club in Wellington.
Wow,
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that, Frank.
And then
So like Jupiter Farms, you were building
Jupiter Farms in the 80s. Yeah.
God, that's when it blew up. They were building.
There was a lot of dirt roads there still, and a couple on North Palm Beach, and then
Burt Reynolds was one of the first.
He was there. Yeah, he was there.
Florida State.
And then I went out to the Aero Club. I had gotten one contract there, and that kind of snowballed into a whole bunch of them. And after that, I started buying some rental properties. Ended up with 35 rental properties over the course of 18 months. I bought them all they were all highly leveraged. I bought them with 228 adjustable loans. So all those loans were going to start to adjust. And so I started pulling my closing statements out and to get ready to refi all the properties. And that's when I learned what POC means. And I saw yield spread premium, which I had no idea what that was. I'm like, God, this guy made a fortune.
Right.
Off of me. So I got my mortgage broker's license and started a mortgage company. It was just me and a phone in an office, and I built that up to 20 loan officers with four processors. And I really thought that was going to be my entire career. Mm-hmm. I had some half the crew was subprime, and then the other half was A paper, and I was doing private money financing.
What years was this from?
That would be early 90s. Wow, probably. Great. Yeah. And then so I had about 250 private investors. I was loaning their money out at 65% loan to value, 12% interest, 5-year prepay. Those kind of.
People are complaining about 6.5%.
Right. I'm Italian. And I really thought that was going to be my career, and I put together a private placement where I was going to go out and do two $20 million offerings and go become a national hard money lender. And spend some time getting all that money out on the street, and then just sort of kick back and manage the loans or service the loans, right? Yeah. And then handle any kind of foreclosures that happened. Well, then of course the market shifted in a huge way, which we've never seen before, and so my whole mortgage company vaporized.
What year was that?
06, 07.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the big one.
Yeah, the big one. Okay.
Yeah. But I was still doing hard money, so it went from, I went all the way back to, again, just me in an office with a phone. Mm-hmm. And there was at that point in the beginning, people had enough equity to have hard money lenders refi them out of the option arms that they were in trouble with, right? So we started doing that. The investors that I had were placing their money with many, many other brokers in South Florida, so a lot of their loans started to default. Mm-hmm. And they came to me because they knew that I was also in real estate. And they said, hey, we've got this portfolio of foreclosures. We need to sell it. So I started selling those. And that's how I really got back into real estate.
Wow, I have a lot of experience with that too, Frank. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a bloodbath. I mean, some of these brokers, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
But in any event, that put me back into real estate again. And then one of my residential new agents, he wanted me to go on his first listing appointment with him, which was one of his family members, his father's rental property. And I met his father, and he said, "Hi, my name is Lee Adams, and you're going to buy my business brokerage." First time I met the guy. So, and it was
it's a great way to sell, right?
Yeah.
closing.
So your first business brokerage was you buying a business brokerage.
There you go. Yeah. And he said that, one, because he knew the way that I ran my business, and he didn't want it. The Palm Beach Business Brokers is the first and the oldest business brokerage in Palm Beach County. He's the second owner. He had a bunch of the bigger national franchises try and buy. They wanted the name more than anything else.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't want to do that. I want to steward it to somebody who's really going to continue to grow it. And so the names were very similar, which is why I thought of me. So I ended up buying, and his retirement happened about 3 years after that, not during that time. I bought Palm Beach Business Brokers 5 years ago.
Okay.
Palm Beach Business Brokers 5 years ago, and then went into the business brokerage business as well. And I think it's an excellent match, actually. A lot of business brokers don't like to deal with realtors because it is apples and oranges. I mean, the only thing we have in common is the license.
Why do you think some states classify it under a real estate license? Because it's a real asset, or?
Well, there's, to my knowledge, 17 states that require a real estate license. The rest do not. Tennessee is one that does not require any kind of license whatsoever, and most of them don't. I think the reason why they put us in with real estate, number one, there's not enough business brokers for any state, I think, to create a license just for them.
I see.
There's only 1,400 business brokers in Florida, and so there's not enough for them to create a whole. So they put us into the real estate box, I think, because very few businesses in Florida at least sell with the real estate. Most of them are leased. And so part of the sale of a business is renegotiating the lease.
I see.
And in very few instances, we can get a commission on the new lease. And so they say, okay, well, that's real estate. We'll put them over there.
Got it.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So Palm Beach Business Brokers Group, how many people do you have now? Is it just you? Is it a one-man show? Do you have a team?
Just me. Yeah,
Oh,
I
fantastic.
blew the whole thing up recently, actually, in the last 3 months. Both real estate and business brokerage, because I'm in the process of, number one, moving into other states, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee. That's why I mentioned Tennessee, and possibly Virginia. And then kind of melding the two together. I kept them separate in the beginning because, as I said, business brokers, they really don't want to work with realtors, especially residential realtors. And so, but I've found through personal experience that it's actually a good thing. Especially in a place like Florida and most of the Southeast, where you have a lot of people moving from other areas. We get to the residential real estate section gets to capture them as they move into town.
They're top of funnel, kind of.
Yeah. And so that's why. Yeah.
That's
And
fantastic.
same thing when they're selling and moving out.
So do you pay a referral to agents?
I do. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah. We do pay a 25% referral fee to any residential agent that refers a business listing or buyer to us, actually. And since it is apples and oranges.
Yeah, tell a little bit. Most of our listeners, Frank, are real estate professionals. A lot of agents. There are some buyers and sellers, obviously, as well,
And investors.
And investors. Tell them the difference between a business broker and then a real estate broker. Tell them the difference.
So a real estate broker obviously is selling either commercial or residential real estate, and it's kind of like a flow chart of. I mean, I joke sometimes, but it's true when you think about it. I mean, I could teach anybody how to sell. I mean, it's like, if this happens, do this. If that happens, do that, and then you enter the people.
Yeah, you're big on scripting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but when you get into a business sale, everyone is different. And you have to know how to not only analyze financial statements, but recast financial statements. You have to have more of a business mindset and come in and look at the ways that that business actually works from the inside out so that you can market it. Yeah.
So is it 25% of what? Are the commissions similar as in residential real estate? Is it structured different? Like, what is the 25% of?
So it works. I do the referral the same way that a realtor would. So if you're referring a buyer, you get 25% of the buy side.
Okay.
And if you're referring a listing, you get 25% of the list side. Commissions in business brokerage are higher.
Oh, they are higher.
Yeah.
What's the normal? Like, in residential.
Are we allowed to say?
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I can tell you what I charge.
residential's 5 to 7%, right?
No, business listings, I mean, we call them success fees, first of all.
Okay.
I love it.
That's part of the
I love it.
We don't get paid unless it successfully sells.
I like it.
So we charge a 10% fee, and depending on the business size, it can go up to 12% and sometimes 15%.
Okay.
And then rarely, even though we do have our own association and our own MLS where we cooperate, in Florida we do, and that's another thing that's different about Florida. A lot of states don't have a business brokerage association.
So is that on a state level, or is it just a private entity?
It's the Business Brokers of Florida. It is a state level, and then there's 5 districts.
Okay.
And it was formed actually by the original, with 2 other brokers, by the original owner of Palm Beach Business Brokers. So before he passed away last year, I got to hear the whole, imagine talking to the person that came up with the MLS, right? And the association. So what happens with the association is that there's standardized forms that we use. So we all use the same listing contract. We all use the same purchase and sale contract. All use the same NDA. And then there is a co-op agreement, meaning when we deal with another BBF member, we have to split 50-50.
Okay.
And then there's a tier, so if it goes up into the multi-million-dollar range, it leans more towards the listing agent because there's more work on a business sale on the listing agent than there is on the buyer's agent. So.
It's interesting, since we're real estate in the digital age, we like to always touch on tech. So we're curious what, if any, kind of tech that you use in your business. And before we get to that, I'm curious because I find that commercial real estate, for example, is a lot harder for the layperson, Joe Public, to access because with platforms like Zillow, Realtor.com, RealTrade, right? You can go out there and you can see all the listings, right? So any of my friends that have money to burn, they're saying they're going to buy a house and flip it or they're going to Airbnb it or whatever. But it seems like the access to commercial real estate in terms of tech and knowledge of data and listings isn't as good. And, Ryan and I work on RealTrade as a small business, but Realty is a small business. I think I'm an accredited investor. It doesn't seem like, even though I would be interested in potentially looking at businesses and stuff like that, I wouldn't know the first place to go to look at offerings, see what cap rates are and things like that. Is there some sort of MLS for businesses? I know our MLS lets people put it on there, but I don't really see much on there.
So there is very little tech when it comes to business brokerage. And I think part of that is the confidentiality factor. The main service that a business broker offers is confidentiality.
Yep.
No business owner wants anyone
Public
to know
to know.
that their business is for sale.
Right.
So, and that makes it difficult for us because we have to sell something without telling anybody it's for sale.
Right.
And so there are, and you're right with the commercial real estate. It's not as accessible to the general public. Really, LoopNet is the only place that you can find. I mean, that's the biggest one.
Crexy now. There's one called
Yeah,
Crexy.
there's another one as well, yeah. But LoopNet, the company that owns LoopNet, also owns BizBuySell. So if you were to go onto the web and just say, businesses for sale in South Florida, you're going to inevitably, at the top of the list, is going to be a BizBuySell.
Okay.
The challenge with BizBuySell is if you look at LoopNet allows commercial property owners to list their properties on LoopNet. So it's not just brokers. Like the residential MLS, you can't put your property
Right.
on it, right? And so you'll see a huge swath of owners that have their properties listed on LoopNet, commercial real estate. They also let people, sellers, put their businesses for sale on BizBuySell. But there's a huge difference between the two because when you look at commercial real estate and the owners that have their properties on it, a lot of them, they're savvy real estate, commercial real estate people, so they know how to price the property, they know how to present it. A lot of them are brokers anyway. They're just managing their own portfolio. So there's a whole, it's a very educated group of people on both sides in there. When you get over to BizBuySell, you've got business owners putting their businesses on there for sale, and they're just, they don't know how to price the business. They don't know how to recast the financials. So there's a lot of stuff on there that is just incorrectly, and it doesn't really serve the buyers or the sellers very well at all.
I see.
And so that's the first conversation I have when I talk to a buyer, because I advertise on Biz Buy Sell. I get a lot of buyer contacts from there. I say, are you working with a broker? And they're like, no, I'm trying to do this on my own. I said, well, the first thing you have to know is that there's a lot of stuff you're going to see on Biz Buy Sell that is incorrect.
Right.
And when you get into the mire of a contract with a seller, that's when you really find out what the business is worth, what the income, and now you've invested all this time with someone and
Doing your due diligence.
And like realtors, do you work with attorneys for the actual closing and the heavy duty legal jargon and stuff?
Yeah, and that's there's a handful of attorneys in South Florida that handle nothing but business sales, and those are the ones that we tend to go to because they've got their closing packages already put together, and it's a very it's a minimal. I mean, your typical Main Street business closing is maybe $3,000, and they split between buyer and seller, and it's
$3,000 commission
for the closing. No, that's for the closing fee.
Closing costs.
Oh,
costs.
okay.
A little different than real estate.
Yeah, and it might get up into $5,000 or $6,000 if it's if it's a construction company, you got equipment that needs to be retitled, and things like that. It depends on the amount, but it's not a huge fee, and both buyer and seller split that. Now, there are sometimes buyers and sellers sometimes want to bring in their own attorneys to review paperwork, and that can sometimes be a little bit of a nightmare because they want to get that closing away from that escrow agent and that closing attorney. Well, we can handle this ourselves. And I mean, that $3,000 little fee turns into 10, 15, 20 overnight.
Of course.
And would you say that you represent 50-50 sellers of businesses, buyers of businesses, or does it kind of trend more on the selling side? Or
fluctuates both ways. I mean, I have probably, 8 listings right now. I go up to maybe 10 at the most, and then it gets, just for me at least, I don't like to have more than 10 because I lose the personal touch, which is, I think, important. But yeah, it fluctuates back and forth, just like with real estate.
Are you seeing any kind of movement, like in the residential market, with the market shifting? Do you see anything in the business brokerage shifting right now?
So it's interesting because when the economy is not doing well, business brokerage actually thrives.
Okay.
Because you have executives that are they're either laid off or they're offered early retirement, and they're of an age where they don't want to retire yet, and so they buy a job.
Wow.
So businesses seem to surge when the economy is off.
Interesting. And how does interest rates affect, if at all, business brokerage?
Doesn't really. That's one of the things that is different again with businesses and real estate is there's not very many. There are really only 2 financing options for businesses, and that is SBA.
Yep.
And the business has to be approved for SBA financing, and that's kind of a little bit difficult because they're heavy on tax returns, and that's how they approve the business.
Yeah.
And if you have a good CPA, your tax return is going to show you don't make any money. And so it's difficult to get a business approved for SBA financing. So then that leaves seller financing. No seller wants to finance their business. When I sit down with them, I bring up that conversation. I'm like, you're not going to want, you're going to poke me in the eye with a pen because you don't want to hear this, but you may have to consider this. And, I usually, they'll all say no, and I walk through the process with them because about, a couple months in, I'm like, look, remember when I told you about financing, we may need to start advertising that you're offering financing. And so when we do put it out there that way, it does ramp up interest.
That's amazing that there isn't more capital markets that are looking in on businesses and helping grow business. Such great for the economy. You'd think there would be a need for that.
It's tough because when you look at if we're talking Main Street businesses and let's say it's a dry cleaner, right? That and I know from having been in the hard money business, like you loan. Nobody wants to think about this, but you loan money based on your decision to loan money is based on the worst case, like what happens if they don't pay.
How do I get my money back?
Right. And
what
so,
can I take?
if you're talking about a plumbing contractor, let's say, right? What are you selling really? I mean, you're going to end up with a box full of fittings. I mean,
Right.
And they owe you $100,000. I mean, so it's and surprisingly, businesses I would say that are priced from $800,000 and below are cash.
Yeah.
And anything above that, it just makes it easier to market if you offer SBA financing.
So I have a somewhat selfish question in terms of valuing a real estate brokerage.
Yep.
I've always thought that was difficult. When we started Sotheby's, we considered acquiring an existing brokerage, me and the two people that I started with, rather than start from scratch, because Sotheby's as a franchise was nervous, even though we were seasoned agents about starting something. They'd rather us convert or acquire an existing business. And I was having a very tough time justifying, frankly, any kind of number, but especially a large one, because as we all know, realtors are all independent contractors, right? And what's to say I agree to pay $1 million for that brokerage that has 4 locations and 200 agents, and then they hate me, and they all leave.
Yeah.
So they're all independent.
I see that happening, but
Right.
I mean,
I know.
you're only as good as your last sale, too.
Right.
I mean,
So obviously you can discount cash flows and things like that, and you could do a transition potentially where the operators stay on for a certain amount of time. But I just figured that would be kind of risky, right? With people that are all independent contractors, as most of the value of the business.
Yeah. I've not sold a real estate brokerage, but I would think that if I were to sit down with a sizable one that was looking to go onto the market, number one, the listings are the property of the broker,
Right.
And so you can kind of do you look at how much time is left on each one of them and what the chances are and where
Potential
all that kind of
commissions,
stuff,
right.
yeah. You're right. The people can leave. But when you get into the bigger brokerages, the people themselves really, they've got. I think it comes down to pricing it based on the market share that the brand has.
Fair enough.
That's really because there have been, without mentioning them, there was a sizable company in Palm Beach County that sold to another sizable company. I don't know what the numbers were, but I'm sure that's what they were looking at, was the market share that they had. So
Very interesting. Ryan actually had a great question. He's wondering, where do you see the future of business brokerage going, like the industry at large? And secondly, do you see any new disruptors coming to market, whether it's a platform like we were talking about, certain valuation tools, like anything you see coming down the pipe?
I don't see anything coming down the pike like that. I think that business brokerage, the more that people, it's surprising to me when people say, well, what do you do? I'm a business broker. They're like, what's that?
I know. Yeah.
And so I think that's where at least for me, that's where I want to move into next, is educating the general public on exactly what it is that we do, and what our value is, and so I think that's probably where the growth is going to be, and more people learning about the business brokerage field and what we actually do, and
Right.
why,
I mean, what a great
why not to
st-
try
yeah.
why not to go out and try and do this on your own. So
Right. Interesting.
And what a great location here in Florida. I mean, we're so business, oriented here. I mean, the way that we have our taxes set up, call what you want politically, but the way we called COVID, right? I mean, it worked out,
I mean,
right?
I call it.
But it did work out, right? We have
Yeah.
a lot of businesses now. I mean, I've actually
yes.
had real estate clients that they said, Ryan, I'm headquartering my business in Florida now. The money that I'm saving on my state tax, just headquartering my business here in Florida, literally pays for my cost of living. And I've had multiple clients over that in the last couple of years, Ryan.
Yeah. I would think that the trend would have to be going up, I would guess, for business brokerages. And here's why. Because I think back in the industrial age, you had magnates that were owners of consolidated companies, and a lot of blue-collar workers for corporations. That was kind of the thing. You go to college, you get a job at the corporation, you work, you get your pension, and you're done. Now we're in an era of independent contractors, gig economy,
Yep.
buying a job, like more people ever. I mean, of course, I work out of an incubator, right? So I know a lot of entrepreneurs, so maybe I'm a little biased, but I just think the trend over the globe, and especially the United States and in our area, is more people being their own boss.
They wanna be business
They want to
owners.
be business owners. So not that you have the Rockefellers and the people like that per se. Of course we do, but I think you have a lot more of the small and medium-sized fish. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think that's going to become more prevalent because the whole country is full of big box stores everywhere, and that was the trend for a long time, and that was also the trend when you saw retail. Like, I grew up in a Norman Rockwell kind of town up north, okay, and I remember when they built a mall on the outskirts of town and downtown Main Street just died, right?
Yeah.
But now, what do you see in all these little, especially here?
Right.
Look, you see it right here.
They're bringing it back again because there's something about that just screams America, right?
Right.
Yep.
And people like that. So I think it fluctuates. I think that's going to happen as well with. I don't know why this comes to mind, but my son, who's 12, he was just shattered when Toys R Us went out of business.
Right.
Yeah. And I said to him, I'm like, just relax.
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen is the little mom and pop toy stores are going to, and those have way cooler toys anyway. Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this or not, but Toys R Us actually opened up in Macy's
Yeah.
now. So they have
I learned that during the Thanksgiving Day parade
Yep.
because they had a float.
Yeah.
Because when Toys R Us was closing, and I'm an adult,
Yeah.
but that was nostalgia for me as
Yeah.
a kid, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, twist
Where
the
you gonna get
knife!
toys?
Where are you
Yeah.
gonna get toys?" That was like part of
I
my
know.
childhood growing up. And when I learned that Macy's did that, it's like, wow, Macy's made a smart move, and now
I
it's
don't know. I don't think they bought Toys R Us. I think Toys R Us is like a vendor in their store. I
Oh,
believe. Maybe they did. I don't know.
maybe. So I was under the impression that they bought them, and now that's why they have them in the stores, right? And they were in the Thanksgiving parade. We'll have to look that up. But if they did buy it, I thought that was, because a big box firm like that, as challenges, they're getting blockbustered,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, wow, that's genius. Because I remember as a kid pouting the whole time my mom dragged me around the mall.
Yeah.
And now if there was a Toys R Us in Macy's, I would have a whole different opinion about going shopping with my parents, That's fantastic.
They sell toys in Barnes and Noble now too. So.
Oh, really? Oh, that's smart. That's smart. And Starbucks, which was another
Yeah,
smart thing
yeah.
that they did. Yeah.
So it created a whole new market. There's another thing another market that was created during COVID with restaurants that were shut down, and I learned about this in one of the business brokerage conferences that we went through. There's something called ghost kitchens. Have you ever heard of
Yeah.
that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's a huge. I mean, when you think about it, think about the cost to have a brick and mortar restaurant, right? Where if you just have an industrial kitchen somewhere in a industrial park, I mean the number of concepts that you can, and you put all your money into the packaging and the marketing, it just seems to me like it makes way more sense.
Did you hear that guy, Mr. Beast, on YouTube, open up like 500 locations for his burger franchise? All ghost kitchens.
That's fantastic.
And he sold them, he's big on YouTube, which, it goes to like businesses, you see it, obviously we try to, it's like, these social marketplaces, right? Where people can market their businesses socially. I see that as a lot as the future.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, is there anything before we land this plane that you would like to say that you think we forgot to ask about business brokerages, your company?
Well, my company, obviously, I think it's the best. No, the business brokerage field, I think, and we're going to see this happen in real estate as well. I mean, the personal, we could have very easily done this over the phone, but there's nothing that's going to replace this.
I know.
Couldn't agree more. I
And-
tell people that all the time.
And I think that in real estate, if this goes away, that's going to be a sad day.
Yes.
Because it really there's so much that you can learn about people. Not only and it's one of the most stressful parts, times of their life is selling and moving and all that kind of stuff. It's the same thing with a business. It's more actually. And so I think that pouring into and educating brokers on how to actually do this. That's another thing I say to my son. I'm like, if you can, we practice shaking hands and making eye contact. I'm like, if you can do that in your generation, you're going to own the world.
Yeah, you've already set yourself
Because
apart.
Nobody does that anymore.
Yeah.
And I think so. I think that's the way that this should go.
Yeah.
Business brokerage. I think it's going to explode more in that way than any other way. And hopefully tech is part of that, just to assist.
Right.
It's like
But
the
never
top of the
gonna
funnel.
replace.
that's like you can make the connection, right? Like we met first on RealTrade, right? That's
exactly,
Frank.
yeah.
And then, things go and you communicate and then you meet in person, solidify a great relationship.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more about the in-person thing. I think that, the pendulum, we always discuss this, the pendulum swings too far in either direction and in all kinds of contexts that we could cite. But I think that my beginning of my career was in-person, on-site sales, and the amount of deals that I put together by having coffee with someone and learning something that they needed that I had, or vice versa. Being a little bit
They
more.
don't tell you right away. You need to look in somebody's eyes and see the body language and the whole thing to figure out, because they don't necessarily reveal what they want in the beginning.
That's right.
And so that's the part I like about it most, actually.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you're someone, I don't come across these people often, but you're someone that understands the psychology and the nuance of sales,
whole
right?
thing.
The whole thing.
I mean,
the whole thing.
He's got so much experience: a builder,
Yeah.
agent, business broker. You were in mortgage industry, Frank.
Hard money.
I don't know.
Hard
Yeah,
money. I mean, holy smokes!
that
It's,
was-
I didn't know this, and that's what, until you came here on the show.
So if someone's thinking about selling a business or buying a business, what would you recommend first and foremost? And then ultimately, how can they reach you?
So they can reach me through, I have a website called callwithfrank.com, and you log on there. It's got my entire schedule. You
Love
can
that.
schedule a 30
Callwithfrank.com.
Callwithfrank.com, yes.
I love it.
And I'll spend 30 minutes, or you can book 2 appointments if you want an hour, and we'll talk about what's required to value the company and what it looks like, through the whole process. And that's
And if someone's looking to buy, they can go to that website too. And
same thing.
Same
yeah,
thing.
Yep. And then I put them on a drip, just like with real estate.
Yeah.
And we figure out a lot of people say, "Well, I just want to buy a business. What industries are you interested in?" I don't know.
Right.
So we start at that
Right.
bottom point, and then we go from there. And having a conversation with them, a lot of times they'll mention certain things, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, nah, I don't say it to them, but I'm like, you wouldn't be good at that, and maybe we should show you this instead. And they end up buying something that they didn't mention at all, just because I kind of pull it out of them.
Love it, Frank. I mean, that's it. That's adding value. That's making
Yeah.
those connections. Being good in sales. It's like, some people are scared of salespeople, but a good salesperson, can get that information from you that you actually need.
We have to be consultants. People
I
don't
know.
like salespeople.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know,
It's
that's
the same
what I mean,
thing as the
consultants,
success
but, like-
fee and the commission.
Yeah.
Don't like the words.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're consultants.
So finally, and Ryan Bull, I have to give credit. He came up with another great question. Where do you see the future, both for the industry and you, Frank, in terms of your business brokerage?
The industry is, that's a tough question to answer. But I mean, I can go more into where I see me. I see me more in the education
Okay.
side of educating buyers and sellers on what the value of a business broker is, and how to position their business to gain the most value when they put it on the market, and how to prepare it to for sale.
Right.
And those are the most important things when they're transitioning from building something into their next season of life. So
Okay.
yeah.
That's great.
Wow. I want to leave this thing because we got a lot of listeners, a lot of real estate. They're like the OG entrepreneurs, right? And you've actually a quintessential entrepreneur, Frank. Like you said, have all this experience. What's one tip that you'd want to leave with all these real estate agents and entrepreneurs that are listening to the podcast?
Probably the most important thing that I learned over all of this is do not get emotionally attached to the outcome of any negotiation that you're in the middle of. Because
Love that.
I have lost so much sleep and hair. I really am. I think his hair has its own instinct.
I know.
It enters the room before me.
And so not to get emotionally attached. And I would tell the agents, don't insert yourself in the middle of the transaction, because that's the worst thing in the world when it's what you want out of it. I mean, we should be the referees outside the ring. If you get in the ring with the boxers, you're going to get punched.
Yeah.
And so just stay outside and guide from there.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so that's it.
I love that.
Wow, that's great advice.
I love it. Well, can you think of anything else? I think we
No, that's awesome.
solved all the world's problems.
We learned so much today. I mean, business brokers, what a great industry. And thanks for educating all of us.
So the website again, one more time, is?
The website's pbbrokers.com.
Okay.
And callwithfrank.com to schedule a call with me. Yeah.
Easy to remember. I love that.
Easy. I love it. I might have to do a call with Ryan or call with Beckett. I like it. That's a great idea. Great idea. Well, thank you everyone at home listening. We are on pretty much every podcast platform possible. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, et cetera, et cetera. We're on all socials, the REDA Podcast. You can email questions, feedback at the REDA Podcast at gmail.com. Frank, thank you so much. That was a pleasure. We learned a ton. Ryan, thank you as always. Smash that like button, subscribe, give us feedback for anything that you would like, that you think you would value as content. Bye, guys.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it.